Hello, my friends. Let's begin today's update with some important news for Ukraine. And as always, what is good for Ukraine is usually very bad for Russia. Recently, reports surfaced of two serious incidents involving Russian naval vessels. First, let's talk about the submarine Novorossiysk, a Project 636.3 diesel-electric attack submarine operating in the Mediterranean Sea. On September 27th, Russian media channels reported that this submarine suffered a critical malfunction in its fuel system. The leak forced the vessel to surface, exposing its position. While this isn't a nuclear submarine, any attack submarine poses a potential threat to NATO allies, so a failure like this significantly reduces Russia's capability. The leak also caused environmental damage, though limited compared to an oil tanker spill. Right now, the submarine's crew reportedly lacks the spare parts to fix the issue, meaning the vessel may remain stranded and vulnerable. Once again, this shows why Russian warships are a danger not just to Ukraine, but also to international waters and even the environment. The second incident involves the Russian missile corvette Biranem in the Azov Sea region. In fact, back in August 2025, this warship collided with a civilian tanker, sustaining serious damage. And also in August, Russia lost a naval tugboat Captain Ushakov, which sank during outfitting in St. Petersburg. Moscow initially claimed Ukraine was responsible, but there's no real evidence of that. So we see a pattern. Almost every month, Russia suffers failures or losses at sea. But while Russia struggles with technical failures, it continues its massive strikes on Ukraine. At the time of recording this update, Russia is carrying out one of the largest air assaults in recent months. Swarms of Shahed drones, cruise missiles, and ballistic missiles are targeting Kyiv and other Ukrainian cities. Strategic bombers were used to launch this wave of attacks. The map from inside US shows yellow trajectories for drones, red for cruise missiles, and blue for ballistic missiles. One of the main targets was the Star-Kostenov airfield, which Russia has repeatedly tried to destroy. Meanwhile, civilian areas were hit directly. In Kyiv's Borispol district, private homes burned after strikes. Poland even closed part of its airspace and scrambled F-16s to patrol the skies, while NATO reconnaissance aircraft monitored the situation. Once again, Ukraine focuses on military targets, while Russia deliberately attacks civilian infrastructure. Now let's turn to an even more dangerous issue, the Zaporizhzhia Nuclear Power Plant. This is Europe's largest nuclear facility, and for the past 4 days it has been running only on emergency diesel generators after external power lines were cut. Out of 18 backup generators, just 7 are currently operational. The International Atomic Energy Agency warns that this is extremely risky. Without stable electricity, the reactors cannot be safely cooled. Experts compare this to Fukushima but say that Zaporizhzhia could be even worse because the reactors are larger.
Satellite images show no Ukrainian strikes on local substations despite Russian claims. It appears that Moscow itself is manipulating the power lines, possibly to reroute electricity for occupied territories. In doing so, they risk a catastrophic meltdown that could affect not just Ukraine, but all of Europe and even parts of Asia. This is a reckless gamble, exactly the kind of experimentation that caused the Chernobyl disaster. Meanwhile, Russian officials are once again using aggressive, warlike rhetoric. At the United Nations, Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov repeated threats against NATO. He framed the war not as a conflict over Ukraine, but as part of a larger Russian struggle against the West. Moscow speaks of root causes dating back to 2008, when Putin first announced his dream of restoring the Soviet sphere of influence. This vision includes not just Ukraine, but also Poland, the Baltic states, the Czech Republic, Slovakia, Moldova, Romania, and even Finland. Russia has already issued ultimatums to NATO before, and the language today is alarmingly similar to the rhetoric in late 2021 just before the full-scale invasion of Ukraine. Russian leaders are also hinting at new military mobilization. Bloggers and opposition figures inside Russia are openly discussing the possibility of drafting up to 1 million men. Moscow reformed its mobilization system to prevent mass draft dodging, meaning far more Russians could be conscripted than in 2022. If that happens, Russia could attempt new offensives not only in Ukraine, but potentially against NATO's weakest points, such as the Baltic states and the Suwalki corridor. Europe, with its limited readiness for drone warfare and large-scale mobilization, would face enormous challenges. Some may ask, can Russia actually afford this war long-term? Sadly, the answer is yes. The Russian economy is stagnating, but not collapsing. It still enjoys support from partners like China and India. Russia's vast natural resources provide revenue, and society has shown little resistance to staggering casualties estimated at over 1 million soldiers killed or wounded since the war began. Ukraine, on the other hand, continues to resist heroically. Despite for years of brutal war, Ukrainian morale remains strong, and the armed forces are among the most capable in Europe. History shows that empires collapse after prolonged wars, as in World War I, but so far, Ukraine has held the line. Friends, this is the reality we face. Russia's navy is failing. Its strikes on Ukraine grow more desperate and brutal. The Zaporizhzhia Nuclear Plant remains a ticking time bomb, and the Kremlin is openly preparing for larger confrontation with NATO. I truly hope I am wrong in my predictions. I hope Europe remains at peace and Ukraine continues to receive the support it needs. But we must remain aware and prepared. Thank you so much for watching and supporting this channel.